lots of you will recognize Karthik Venkataraman, sportscaster for WKPT a few years ago, also a newscaster at WCYB. Did a podcast briefly interviewing some ETSU coaches. Went to Syracuse, got his master's. Now guess what? He's in the 74th largest market in the country, which is just a little bit bigger than ours, which is 98. Covering all things Nebraska in Omaha. And Karthik, I'm now putting the boom out on you. You got to get the awareness like we used to do in the Buccaneer Football Foundation and Friends, to have the awareness to bring back Solomon Dewana's old alma mater, Nebraska Omaha football. But your first story for Channel 3, I think it was something that had a lot of local interest. And it was the quarterback for Nebraska, Adrian Martinez, that was originally going to play at Tennessee. Well, now he's starting at Nebraska as a true freshman. I guess, Karthik, it's nice to talk to you again. But in doing your first story, I got to ask, did you ever ask Adrian Martinez what it was about Butch Jones that said, I want to play for him and not necessarily the Tennessee Volunteers?
I haven't gotten around to asking him why not that. I think a lot of the questions going directed at media day after he was named the starting quarterback were about his starting position when he found out his relationship with the guy he was competing with, Jebbia, who is now transferred out of school. But everything that I've heard, he just has a really strong relationship with Scott Frost. And after he committed verbally to Tennessee, he went to visit Nebraska. He just really liked the way that Scott Frost put everything together. I think he really bought into his vision when Frost said he was coming to Nebraska. That's just kind of how the story goes. When you buy into somebody's inspiration moving forward, I think that has a lot to do with where you want to go. And I think the departure of Butch Jones obviously did play a huge part in his decision. We all know how good of a recruiter Butch Jones was. And so when he parted ways with the University of Tennessee, or rather was let go, I think Nebraska was just a choice for him that he looked at heavily.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit, you say you know how good Butch Jones was as a recruiter. I will tell you, I think he was a little overrated because I'll just give you this example. The 2014 class was ranked 5th in the country. Now, obviously, it wasn't the 5th ranked class in the country, and knowing a little bit how these recruiting ratings come out, and I think you may find this out in covering Nebraska, a lot of times it's the teams with the big-time fan bases that are always going to be ranked high. The Alabamas and all this. And that's because, they want to keep that big-time fan base happy and paying the $10 a month to rivals or 24/7 or whatever it is. So, I think it's very telling that Derek Dooley never had a recruiting class lower than number 17. Take that for what it is. But that leads me to go and ask you then, Adrian Martinez, starting as a true freshman, is he really that good, or is Nebraska really that weak?
I think Adrian Martinez has a lot of potential, and that's the reason why Frost chose him to be the starting quarterback. He's athletic as all can get out. If you watched any of the spring game, I don't know if you did, for Nebraska, he was running every which way. He made some really nice throws, but throwing is definitely the part that he needs to work on moving forward. His accuracy as a passer has to improve moving forward, but just overall as a true freshman, I mean, even Scott Frost said it in media day the other day. If there was a tiebreaker between him and Jebbia, it
Do you think that Nebraska is stronger with Adrian Martinez, or do you think Tennessee is stronger with we think it's going to be Jared Guarantano, but Marky Billson says it ought to be Keller Christ? What team do you think right now is stronger at the quarterback position?
I've been kind of going back and forth in my mind on this. I saw Guarantano play in the spring game for University of Tennessee. I mean, he looked pretty sharp in that game. He was pretty accurate. A couple receivers dropped some balls that he could probably have some more completions with that game. There were a couple nice touchdowns. That one fade to Callaway was really nice early in the first quarter. I think Guarantano has made a huge leap from his freshman year that I think that Tennessee fans, I mean, that has to be some sign of relief that because last year he wasn't all too good, only like 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, I think, in 6 games or something like that. So I think he's definitely gotten better. Martinez was kind of hard to judge. I mean, one of the big things about my story was he has not played in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when he got injured in high school his junior year and sit out his senior year basically all of that junior year, and now he basically had to wait some time before he plays now as a true freshman. So it's been a while since he's played. I think the ceiling for Adrian Martinez could be higher, but once again, Guarantano was no slump coming out of high school. I mean, he was heavily recruited as a dual threat quarterback. Right now, I would have to just go with Guarantano because you saw what he did last year. You kind of seen the improvement, and I don't really know for sure what to expect out of Martinez. I think he can be good, but I haven't seen him play in 2 years, so we'll see.
Well, now, explain the injury a little bit here that Martinez has suffered. For fans like myself that aren't necessarily familiar with it, but you mentioned he didn't play senior year in college. Boy, going from junior year in high school to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, that's quite the step. What was his ailment?
So he had a torn labrum in his shoulder. He hurt it in his junior year football season. Then he thought it was getting better, elected to play basketball, which he acknowledges wasn't a great decision. He was going up for a layup in the closing moments of one game. Got hacked across the arm, made the injury a little worse. So that basically kept him out his whole entire senior year as well from playing sports. But he's rehabbed. He said the other day that he's feeling better than he ever has. He feels 100%. He's ready to go. And as I said, he made strides in the passing game from the spring to the fall, and he's a starting quarterback, so Brock must sure think he's ready, right?
Well, there you go. I do want to ask you this, though. This is the second time. You mentioned before the 2 spring games, that you watched the spring games. I'm impressed because suddenly I understand how you're now in the 74th largest market, not the 98th, Karthik, because you're watching these spring games. You're, and all this. But are they really that important? Can you find out a lot? I mean, Quentin Dormady didn't throw an incomplete pass in the spring game back in 2017 for Tennessee. Why do you think the spring game is so important?
I think it's big because you see, especially for a young guy like Martinez, like he went out there, he had himself a big game as a true freshman in front of 90,000 fans. Like, I think things like that, baby steps. I mean, it's encouraging to see somebody perform, and he was very confident out there. Guarantano was pretty confident out in the spring game. Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you're playing your first team defense, but we don't know how your first team defense is until you start playing other teams. All these guys have been doing is hitting each other. They haven't been hitting other players. So I think it's not a telltale of all, and that's, I think, why I'm not willing to jump on, oh, yeah, man, Adrian Martinez is going to be so good, because we're still sitting and we don't really have a lot of knowledge on him. Play one spring game in the last 2 years, and then whatever snaps that are limited for media to see in practice. He looks pretty good. I don't think a spring game is tell-all of everything, but I think it's one of the true indicators we have for how much limited access we have to media members.
You mentioned limited access to media members. I'm going to pick up on that. I have been very adamant about how I don't like this trend in college football. Keeping the media out. I'm used to covering the NFL where the practices are open, the locker room is open. You know, you look at the player at Maryland that died, and a lot of people wonder, you know, if we had more open practices, if we had more reporters around, couldn't there have been the relationship established where somebody could have said, hey, look, these guys here at Maryland do not have it, and that would come out, and, you know, or even just reporting in practices, the, you know, crack the whip mentality that Coach Durkin had and such. I want to ask you, I mean, this limited amount of access, to me that also limits the amount of attention to the fans, Karthik. How do you try to get around that? What do you try to do to maximize your reporting with the limited access?
First, I want to take a step back, and I think, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, with these closed-off practices, you have stuff that happen in Maryland, but, I mean, the whole point, just away from sports journalism, I think it's important to say it's the whole point of reporters in the first place is to create these checks and balances. I mean, reporters were there to check government, they're there to check sports teams, I mean, you saw what's happened at Ohio State and the great reporting that's kind of uncovered everything that's happening there.
Sure.
You have all these things. I mean, reporters have always been there to check people when they're getting out of line. So I definitely think access is important, but to continue off of what you directly asked me, I think it's not necessarily really difficult for us to report on stories because we do have a lot of access as far as interviews go. It's just that we don't get to see what happens in practice as much. But, I mean, we're talking to the players every day. Like, we talk to Stop Frost, offensive players, defensive players on Monday. On Tuesday, we talked to the defense. Yesterday, we talked to the offense. Today, Stop Frost was talking again. I mean, it's not like they're not talking to us. It's just more so we don't really get to see what happens behind the closed doors of practice. So the information's not necessarily hard to get. You can still ask questions about how everything's developing, what's going on in practice, obviously what's the quarterback competition here, as well as I'm sure at the University of Tennessee. It's been a huge story. So you just kind of keep asking questions about that, updates, kind of seeing what these guys can do so you can kind of base your questions off of that moving forward. Have they moved into Syria? What are you seeing? Things like that. Sometimes you get like the PR questions or the very scripted answers, but I mean, I don't feel like we have a lack of getting to talk to people. It's just that we don't get to see practice itself.
Okay, I mean, I'm used to, I also used to cover, you probably know, the University of Pittsburgh, and basically their practices were almost always open, and when they tried to close them, both times they got clobbered. So, I mean, you know, you talk about, well, could the media be a distraction? No, not at all. Not at all. And, I mean, I even look at a thing like, you know, Quentin Dormandy, who went sitting and somehow got injured where he couldn't play the rest of the year. And I'm wondering, what are they doing in practice then? Is there a reason why they want to close it up? That sort of thing. And I mean, it's got to stop, in my opinion. I mean, I call on Miles Brand or somebody to you know, have more access for the media so that, you know, for players' rights, if nothing else, you know, that sort of thing. Okay, that's my soapbox, Karthik Venkataraman, but I wanted to mention that. Let me ask you, I mean, Nebraska football culture versus, let's just say, Tennessee football culture. You're from Bristol. You probably have a good idea of it. What is the difference? I mean, obviously these are both traditional powers, but is there something different? Is there a more positive way that the media treats one of the two teams? What are your thoughts?
I think it's much of the same. I mean, both teams had really crappy seasons last year. It's not sugar-coated. I mean, they both had 14 years. I think the media covers them fairly. I think both programs are looking for very exciting new sparks with Jeremy Pruitt coming to the University of Tennessee, Scott Frost coming in at the University of Nebraska. I think both fan bases are really riled up about what's going on. I know the hype in Nebraska is unreal right now because everyone saw what Scott Frost did at University of Central Florida.
Sure.
They're just out of their minds. But hey, I'm born and raised in Tennessee, lived there for 25 years. I know how the UT fans get. I don't think either fan base is really delirious. Obviously, you have your fans that are, you'll have them all there, like 12-0. I mean, like,
sure.
I don't really see that here. I think people
Okay, no, and you mentioned the traveling. I remember years ago, around the turn of the century, Nebraska, which was still quite the power at that time, went to Notre Dame, and it was said there were more Nebraska fans there. Notre Dame was not happy about that. I'll just put it that way. They were very displeased of of how that shook down and such. I do, though, want to ask you about high school football. I mean, WCYB, your old station, is going to be broadcasting Science Hill Dobbins Bennett tomorrow on, actually it's going to be on the CW, but it's the same staff, as you know. Now, I believe, and I'm going with some historic stats, but I believe in Nebraska, 1 out of every 3 boys in high school plays high school football, which when you think about it is amazing. But, you know, there aren't that many people in North Platte, too. I mean, if they're going to have a team, you know, basically everybody's got to go out for it. But it comes to that stereotype of the homegrown Nebraska lineman. They redshirt him, he lives in the weight room, et cetera, and then someone from Papillion is starting at right guard, you know, that sort of thing. Is that still the case in Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, it's heavily recruited here. I think, you know, with Scott Sauce, he has a lot of pipelines in different states. I think we'll start seeing some recruits coming from out of state. But, I mean, hey, like, they still go for the Nebraska guys. They're still athletes that get turned out of the state all the time. Jalen Bradley, he's the guy that came from Bellevue West at the school out here in Omaha a couple years ago. He's one of the running backs on Nebraska's team. I think almost every state has that. They recruit a lot in state because there's no better pipeline.
Oh, sure, I get that. No, go ahead, I'm sorry, yeah.
They do, kind of like Wisconsin in that way, right? They both kind of go for their guys that are local, their staunch guys, their bred guys. But yeah, no, football's like you sitting down here, I don't expect the recruiting to go any different. I think the way that those players are prepared once they get to the University of Nebraska has changed a lot, but I don't think the recruiting process of looking at guys in state is going to change.
Okay, we're talking to our old friend, Karthik Venkataraman. Now, Channel 3, what are the call letters? I mean, what are they? This is, you know, WEMB 1420, but it's 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. What is the name of the station other than just Channel 3 that you are working for now?
So it's called KMTV.
Okay.
We go by 3 News now. We're actually, at my place, it's Channel 7. I'm not exactly sure how all the TV channels here work. I've only been there for about 7 years.
Yeah, it's not like you have rabbit ears and you flip the UHF dial to 39 anymore. I mean, that's not the case, and that's one of the things where you even that, you know, I mean, it used to be that the channel, they would give you that. Now, you know, you could be Channel 4 over the air, but broadcast on 8 on whatever cable system you have, so what's the big deal, you know, that sort of thing. I do get that, but anyway,
By KMTV, 3 News now. That's where we are.
Okay.
Omaha Sports Society, our sports department. So it's been a good time. I've had a lot of fun so far. Obviously, football's very big, so just been cracking down on all the high school football and the college football going down. So it's been a good time.
A lot of people think that Nebraska and Tennessee, once the big money from TV started coming into college football, that the 2 teams that were hit the most were Tennessee and Nebraska. It basically allowed everybody else in their conference to catch up. Look at in the Big Ten Northwestern. Look at in the SEC, well, Vanderbilt beating Tennessee 4 out of the last 6 years. Question that I have, what team do you think has the best chance to come back and restore past glories?
In the Big Ten?
In either Nebraska versus Tennessee. I mean, you're talking about Tennessee, guys. We can only talk about Nebraska so much, so comparing them both, yeah, I mean, before people start tuning out, I mean, it's very interesting. Adrian Martinez, how he'll do and all this sort of stuff. I mean, if he's the next Turner Gill or if he's the next bust, you know, that sort of thing. But my question is going to be, what team do you think has a better chance to restore the past glories that they enjoyed, let's say, in 1997? I mean, that's a good year for both Tennessee and Nebraska. Do you think there's a better chance for Nebraska to restore those past glories or Tennessee?
I'll go with Nebraska.
Really? Okay.
Mostly because I buy into Scott Frost. Not that I don't buy into Jeremy Pruitt, obviously. He has a huge pedigree background. He's been to Florida State, Georgia, Alabama. He's been to some pretty big schools, too.
Okay, well, I mean, he'll hear about it if he says otherwise. But no, seriously, I'm not sure. I mean, I've been very critical of some of the moves that Tennessee has made. You mentioned Osborne as an athletic director, with Phil Fulmer as an athletic director, which is not the way that modern-day athletic directors are going. I do wonder if there is and there's even talk about this, what the influence of Fulmer will be on the program, and is that a good thing? I mean, and for that matter, is it a good thing for Dr. Tom Osborne to still be, at practice, or possibly if he's going to be telling Scott Frost what to do? I mean, it's been, 20 years. They're not, the black shirts aren't running the option anymore,
The vibe I'm getting is Osborne doesn't really give input at practice. He's kind of there. If Frost kind of seeks out advice from him, he'll give it. But he's just more of a presence there. But I think that presence there, the 3 national championships, all that, I think that it's big. I mean, I think the players respect that. Obviously, it's a big asset for Frost anytime he's there. I mean, Frost played under Osborne. But at the same time, I think Fulmer won a championship at Tennessee too. I think Pruitt will look. I don't know. It will be interesting to see. I really do think it's. I don't think you can pick wrong either way. I think both programs are going to be on the up and up. I think Tennessee has a lot more to dig themselves out of than maybe Nebraska does. But yeah, I think right now I'll go with Nebraska.
I agree with you. I do think that you're being a little more optimistic than I am, but then again, Karthik Venkataraman, so is everybody else in the world. Hey, Karthik, it's great to catch up with you. Go get them there in Omaha. Don't forget what I told you about bringing back football at Omaha as well, Nebraska, Omaha, that is. Tri-City Sports Now, we will continue. I got some stuff on baseball. The Appalachian League playoffs are going to begin after this.